Chapter 1: The Golden Caravan. Venice in the early 14th century was a city of contradictions, where splendor and poverty intertwined like the veins of marble in its grand cathedrals. Alessandro Vitoli often wandered the Rialto market, soaking in the sights and sounds of the bustling trade that kept the lifeblood of the city flowing. Merchants barked prices over barrels of salted fish and bolts of cloth. Spice dealers teased the air with scents of cinnamon and cloves. The world seemed vast and tantalizingly close, yet Alessandro felt confined, tethered to the small, aging shop his father had left him. One evening, fate came knocking. Alessandro attended a gathering at the Scuola Grande di San Marco, a stately meeting place for Venice's elite traders. He wasn't invited, but had slipped in with the confidence of someone who belonged. The room was alive with the chatter of men discussing trade routes and profits, their voices rising above the clink of goblets filled with Chioggia wine. It was here that Alessandro overheard a conversation that would change his life. Two merchants, weathered by years on the trade routes, spoke of a caravan that would carry treasures from Persia, silks finer than Venetian lace, spices so rare their weight rivaled gold, and dyes that stained cloth with colors unseen in Europe. The Golden Caravan, one of them whispered. It will pass through the Levant in a fortnight. Alessandro's heart raced. This was no ordinary trade opportunity, this was destiny calling. He approached the men boldly, introducing himself with the confidence of someone twice his stature in the merchant world. Though skeptical at first, they were soon swayed by his sharp questions and undeniable enthusiasm. By the end of the evening, he had secured a contact to join the expedition. The journey began at the port of Acre, where the caravan assembled. Alessandro, his entire fortune tied up in this venture, arrived with a pack mule laden with bolts of cloth and a heart full of ambition. The caravan itself was a sight to behold, a seemingly endless line of camels and mules, their loads covered with woven blankets to shield them from the elements. Men from many lands, Persians, Arabs, Armenians, and even a few European traders, spoke in a cacophony of languages, negotiating last-minute deals or arguing over the weight of goods. Among the merchants, Alessandro was an outsider, a young Venetian with more ambition than experience. Some of his fellow traders, like the gruff and seasoned Emir of Aleppo, dismissed him outright. Emir's booming voice often commanded the caravan, and his sharp eyes missed nothing. He had little patience for Alessandro's eagerness, seeing it as naivete. But Alessandro's charm worked wonders. He befriended others in the caravan, such as Yusuf, a spice dealer with a penchant for storytelling, and Zara, a sharp-witted camel handler who had grown up navigating the treacherous Silk Road. Zara, in particular, was intrigued by Alessandro's relentless optimism. "You speak of Venice as if it's the center of the world," Zara said one evening as they sat by a campfire. The desert air was cool, and the stars shone brightly overhead. "But do you know what lies beyond your canals and piazzas?" "I don't," Alessandro admitted, poking at the embers with a stick. "But that's why I'm here, to learn, to see, to bring back something that will make my name unforgettable." Zara laughed. "Careful, Venetian. The desert is an unforgiving teacher." The challenges of the journey soon became evident. The caravan traversed deserts that seemed to stretch endlessly. By day, the sun blazed mercilessly, forcing the travelers to cover their faces with cloth to protect their skin. By night, the cold seeped into their bones. Sandstorms could rise without warning, turning the air into a swirling vortex of grit and fury. Alessandro quickly learned the value of Zara's advice, relying on her expertise to navigate the harsh terrain. Bandits were another constant threat. The caravan traveled in tight formation, guards riding alongside with scimitars and bows at the ready. One night, Alessandro woke to the sound of shouting and the clash of steel. A small group of raiders had attempted to steal supplies, but the guards repelled them. Alessandro, unarmed and trembling, stayed close to Yusuf, who muttered prayers under his breath. "Not all battles are fought with swords," Yusuf told him afterward. "Remember that, young Venetian." When they reached Damascus, the caravan was greeted like royalty. The city's gates opened to reveal a labyrinth of streets teeming with life. Market stalls overflowed with goods, baskets of figs and dates, bolts of richly dyed fabrics, and spices so potent their scents hung in the air like invisible clouds. Alessandro was mesmerized. Damascus was where his silver tongue came into full effect. He negotiated tirelessly with local traders, using every ounce of his charm and cunning. He brokered deals that others had deemed impossible, securing contracts for rare silks dyed in hues of indigo and saffron. When he wasn't bartering, he was learning. He asked questions about the traders' lands, their customs, and the secrets of their crafts. His curiosity endeared him to many, earning him respect despite his youth. One such ally was Malik, an elderly silk merchant whose wares shimmered like liquid sunlight. Alessandro spent hours in Malik's shop, marveling at the fabrics and listening to tales of the Silk Road. Malik, in turn, saw potential in the young Venetian. "You have the heart of a true trader," Malik told him. "But beware, the road back is often harder than the road here." Alessandro dismissed the warning, his mind already racing with plans for his triumphant return to Venice. He envisioned unloading his goods at the Rialto market, his name whispered in awe by those who had once doubted him. For the first time in his life, success felt not just possible, but inevitable. Yet, as the caravan began its return journey, the desert revealed its cruel hand. A storm unlike any they had faced descended upon them, its winds howling like a banshee. Sand blinded the travelers, and supplies were scattered across the dunes. When the storm finally abated, they found themselves vulnerable and exposed. That night, under the pale light of the crescent moon, the bandits struck. They came swiftly and without mercy, their blades gleaming in the dark. Despite the guards' valiant efforts, much of the caravan's cargo was taken. Alessandro managed to flee with a small bundle of goods, his dreams of wealth reduced to a fraction of what they had been. As they limped toward the port of Acre, Alessandro's spirits were low. He felt the weight of his decisions pressing down on him like the desert sun. Yet, even in his despair, he resolved to rebuild. The lessons he had learned on this journey about trust, resilience, and the unpredictable nature of fortune would prove to be his greatest treasures. Little did Alessandro know, his trials were only beginning, and the Golden Caravan was but the first chapter of a much grander tale. Chapter 2: The Storm of Misfortune. The journey back from Damascus began with high spirits, despite the challenges they had endured along the way. Alessandro, though exhausted, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had secured enough goods to ensure a handsome profit upon his return to Venice, and his contracts with the local traders promised further opportunities in the future. Yet, as the caravan crossed the vast expanse of the Syrian desert, fortune revealed its fickle nature. The storm came without warning. One moment, the horizon was clear, the the desert stretching endlessly under a pale blue sky. The next, the winds began to howl, stirring the sands into a roiling, suffocating wall of chaos. Alessandro had never experienced anything like it. The air grew thick with grit, stinging his eyes and choking his lungs. The camels groaned in protest, their handlers shouting futile commands into the deafening roar of the storm. "Cover your face! Stay close to the pack!" Zara's voice cut through the chaos. Alessandro struggled to follow her advice, pulling his cloak tightly around his head. He clung to his mule's reins as the beast brayed in fear, its hooves sinking into the shifting sands. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity. When the storm finally abated, the caravan was in disarray. Supplies lay scattered across the dunes, buried in sand or lost to the winds. Alessandro's precious bundles of silk and spices were reduced to a single sack he had managed to cling to during the storm. The others fared no better, many had lost everything. As the caravan regrouped, a sense of despair hung heavy in the air. But there was no time to mourn their losses. Zara, her face etched with exhaustion, urged the group to press on. "The desert shows no mercy. If we linger, it will claim us." The attack came 2 nights later, under the cover of darkness. Alessandro had just drifted into an uneasy sleep when the first shouts pierced the quiet. Bandits, armed and ruthless, descended upon the weakened caravan. Alessandro stumbled out of his tent, heart pounding, to see chaos erupt around him. Shadows danced in the firelight as guards clashed with the attackers. Camels screamed, their burden spilling onto the sand. "Stay back!" Yusuf grabbed Alessandro by the arm, pulling him toward the safety of the supply wagons. Alessandro's instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't leave without ensuring his remaining goods were secure. He dove toward his mule, frantically untying the sack of silks and slinging it over his shoulder. The attack was swift but brutal. When the bandits finally retreated, they left behind a scene of devastation. Many of the caravan's guards had fallen, and the majority of their cargo had been taken. Alessandro sat among the survivors, clutching his sack as if it were his lifeline. His dreams of wealth, of a triumphant return to Venice, now seemed impossibly distant. By the time the caravan reached the port of Acre, Alessandro was a shadow of his former self. His once proud posture was hunched with exhaustion, his clothes tattered and stained with the dust of the desert. It was here, in a dilapidated inn near the harbor, that Alessandro met Elias. Elias was an older trader with a reputation that preceded him. His hair, streaked with silver, framed a face weathered by years of travel. He observed Alessandro with a quiet intensity as the young merchant sat at a corner table, nursing a cup of watered-down wine. Alessandro, lost in his thoughts, barely noticed when Elias approached and took the seat opposite him. "You look like a man who's been tested by fortune," Elias said, his voice low but steady. Alessandro glanced up, surprised. He considered brushing the stranger off, but found himself nodding instead. "The desert took most of what I had," Alessandro admitted. "The bandits took the rest." Elias studied him for a moment before gesturing to the innkeeper. Moments later, a hearty meal of lentil stew and flatbread was placed before Alessandro. "Eat," Elias said. "You'll think more clearly on a full stomach." As Alessandro ate, he recounted his journey, from the excitement of joining the caravan to the crushing losses of the storm and attack. Elias listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When Alessandro finished, the older man leaned back in his chair. Fortune, Elias began, is like the wind. It can carry you to great heights, but it can just as easily cast you down. The key is to learn how to sail through it. Alessandro frowned. And how do I do that when I've lost everything? You haven't lost everything, Elias said. You still have your life, your mind, and the will to rebuild. That is more than many can say. Elias's words struck a chord in Alessandro. For the first time since the storm, he felt a glimmer of hope. The older merchant leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. There's an old trade route, Elias said. Forgotten by most, but still passable. It runs from Anch to Constantinople, skirting the most dangerous regions. It's not without its risks, but if you're willing to take a chance, it could rebuild what you've lost, and more. Alessandro's eyes widened. Why tell me this? Elias smiled faintly. Because I see potential in you. But there's a condition. Name it. If you succeed, you must use your wealth to help others avoid the perils of this trade. Promise me that, and I'll give you the map. Alessandro hesitated only for a moment. I promise. Elias handed him the map, a piece of parchment worn thin with age but marked with precise details. Alessandro stared at it, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This would be his second chance, and he vowed not to waste it. As Alessandro prepared to set out once more, he couldn't shake the feeling that his encounter with Elias was no coincidence. The older merchant's parting words echoed in his mind, remember, your true wealth lies not in what you carry, but in what you leave behind. Chapter 3, The Pact of Honor. The next morning, Alessandro stood at the edge of the bustling port of Acre, staring at the map Elias had given him. The sun glinted off the parchment as if it were gilded, illuminating the winding lines of the ancient trade route. Each marking told a story of forgotten roads, hidden oases, and treacherous passes. Alessandro felt a surge of hope, but doubt lingered at the edges of his resolve. Could this map truly be the key to his redemption, or was it merely the ramblings of an aging merchant? Elias had already vanished, leaving behind only the memory of his cryptic wisdom. Alessandro tucked the map into his satchel, took a deep breath, and set about preparing for the journey ahead. He had little left in terms of resources, but his silver tongue and sharp mind were assets he could still wield. To embark on this venture, Alessandro would need allies, supplies, and, most importantly, trust. Gathering allies. The docks of Acre teemed with life. Sailors hauled cargo onto ships bound for Europe, merchants haggled over goods, and pilgrims prepared for their voyages to the Holy Land. Alessandro scanned the crowd, searching for familiar faces. Among the chaos, he spotted Yusuf, the spice dealer who had survived the desert storm and bandit attack. Yusuf! Alessandro called, weaving through the throng. The older man turned, his expression brightening as he recognized the young Venetian. Alessandro! By the grace of heaven, you made it! The two embraced, their shared ordeal forging a bond of mutual respect. Over a cup of steaming mint tea, Alessandro laid out his plan. He spoke of Elias's map, the promise of a safer trade route, and the potential riches awaiting those brave enough to traverse it. Yusuf listened intently, stroking his graying beard. It's a bold plan, he said. "But boldness alone won't get us through those lands. Do you know the terrain? The risks?" "I know enough to trust this map," Alessandro replied. "And I know I can't do it alone. Will you join me?" Yusuf hesitated, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally, he nodded. "You'll need someone who knows the spice markets of Constantinople." "I'll come." Encouraged by Yusuf's support, Alessandro sought out Zara, the camel handler who had guided the caravan through the desert. He found her repairing a saddle near the outskirts of the city, her hands calloused but steady. Zara eyed him skeptically as he approached. "You're either brave or foolish to try another journey so soon," she said, crossing her arms. "Both, perhaps," Alessandro admitted. "But this time, I have a plan, a route that avoids the dangers we faced before. I need your skills, Zara. The desert respects no one, but it seems to listen to you." Her stern expression softened, and a hint of a smile tugged at her lips. "Flattery won't save you if you get us lost again, Venetian. But I'll consider it." The journey begins. Within days, Alessandro had assembled a small but capable group, Yusuf, Zara, and a few other survivors from the caravan who believed in his vision. With their pooled resources, they acquired fresh camels, provisions, and weapons for protection. Alessandro felt the weight of their trust pressing down on him, but it also fueled his determination. The first leg of their journey followed familiar roads to Ansh, a city nestled at the crossroads of trade. Here, Alessandro secured additional supplies and sought out local guides who could verify the map's accuracy. One such guide, a wiry man named Harun, examined the parchment with a discerning eye. "This route is old," Harun said, tracing a finger along the faded lines. "Few remember it, and fewer dare to tread it. But it's real, and it could save you weeks of travel." Alessandro's confidence grew as they set out from Ansh, leaving behind the well-trodden paths for the secrets of the ancient trade route. The terrain was challenging, steep mountain passes, dense forests, and arid plains that tested their endurance. Yet, the journey also revealed hidden treasures. They discovered ancient wells that offered sweet water, ruins of forgotten outposts, and villages eager to trade with travelers who brought news from distant lands. Trials along the way. Despite the route's promise, it was not without peril. One night, as they camped near the ruins of an old fortress, a group of thieves ambushed them. The attackers were desperate and poorly armed, but their sheer numbers posed a threat. Alessandro, untrained in combat, watched in terror as his companions fought back. It was Zara who turned the tide, her skill with a dagger unmatched. She moved with precision, her blade flashing in the moonlight as she disarmed and subdued the attackers. Yusuf, though less agile, wielded a staff with surprising strength, fending off those who came too close. When the skirmish ended, the thieves fled, leaving behind only the echoes of their retreating footsteps. Alessandro approached Zara, his voice trembling. "You saved us," he said. "I owe you my life." Zara shrugged, wiping her blade clean. "You owe me a safe journey to Constantinople." The encounter left Alessandro shaken, but resolute. He realized that leadership was not just about vision but about earning the loyalty of those who followed him. That night, he vowed to repay their faith with every ounce of his strength. A glimpse of hope. As they neared Constantinople, the landscape began to change. Rolling hills gave way to lush valleys, and the air grew cooler. The hardships of the journey seemed to melt away as the golden domes of the city appeared on the horizon. For Alessandro, it was a moment of triumph, a reminder that even the darkest storms could lead to brighter days. When they entered the city's bustling markets, their goods, silks, spices, and rare dyes fetched extraordinary prices. Merchants marveled at the quality of the wares, and buyers competed to secure them. Alessandro's name quickly spread, not just as a trader but as a man who had dared to rediscover the forgotten. Yet, as he stood amidst the bustling marketplace, Alessandro's mind returned to Elias's words. The wealth he had gained was not his alone, it was a chance to build something greater. As the sun set over Constantinople, Alessandro began to sketch the foundation of what would later become the Brotherhood of the Compass. Chapter 4: Building a Legacy. Alessandro Vitoli stood atop a stone terrace overlooking the bustling heart of Constantinople's Grand Bazaar. The hum of commerce filled the air, traders haggling, coins clinking, and merchants shouting the virtues of their wares. For Alessandro, the scene was a vision of what trade could be, an orchestra of ambition and opportunity. Yet, he knew well the dangers that lurked beneath the surface: betrayal, exploitation, and the constant threat of ruin. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in shades of gold and crimson, Alessandro felt the weight of his promise to Elias. He had wealth now, but wealth alone was not enough. The map Elias had entrusted to him was not merely a guide to riches, it was a gift meant to be shared. With this thought in mind, Alessandro began planning what would become his greatest endeavor, not just a business empire, but a network dedicated to the principles of trust, cooperation, and fairness. The birth of the Brotherhood. Alessandro's first step was to assemble a council of like-minded merchants. He sought out traders who had earned reputations for honesty and fairness, individuals who valued long-term partnerships over fleeting gains. Among them were Yusuf, whose wisdom and pragmatism had guided Alessandro through the toughest parts of their journey, and Zara, whose courage and resourcefulness made her an invaluable leader. The initial meetings were modest affairs, held in a rented hall above a spice merchant's shop. Alessandro presented his vision, a guild of merchants united not by profit alone, but by shared principles. The Brotherhood of the Compass, as he named it, would serve three purposes. Protection: members would share knowledge of safe routes, reliable guards, and trustworthy local contacts, reducing the risks of travel. Fairness: disputes among merchants would be resolved through arbitration by the Brotherhood, ensuring honesty and deterring corruption. Opportunity: the Brotherhood would pool resources to assist members in times of need, creating a safety net for those who fell on hard times. The proposal was met with skepticism at first. Many of the merchants, hardened by years of cutthroat competition, doubted whether such a system could work. Alessandro, however, spoke with the conviction of a man who had faced ruin and risen again. "We have all known loss," he said, addressing the room. "Storms, bandits, and treachery have taken from each of us. But together, we can weather any storm. Together, we can ensure that trade is not a gamble but a promise, a pact of honor." His words resonated, and one by one, the merchants agreed to join. Building trust. The Brotherhood's early days were challenging. Alessandro and his council worked tirelessly to establish the organization's credibility. They set up offices in major trading hubs, including Constantinople, Venice, and Damascus, where merchants could register their goods, verify contracts, and receive guidance on trade routes. Membership required adherence to strict codes of conduct, and those who violated the Brotherhood's principles faced expulsion. Word of the Brotherhood spread quickly. Merchants who had once operated in fear of exploitation found solace in its protections. Caravans traveling under the Brotherhood's banner reported fewer attacks, as the organization's reputation deterred bandits who feared reprisals. Alessandro's personal involvement, traveling between cities, mediating disputes, and ensuring the Brotherhood's values were upheld, earned him widespread respect. But success also brought challenges. Rival guilds and powerful merchants who profited from chaos began to view the Brotherhood as a threat. Alessandro received warnings, bribes, and even veiled threats, urging him to disband the organization. He refused, his resolve only strengthening in the face of opposition. A beacon of integrity. One of the Brotherhood's most significant tests came during a dispute between two prominent merchants, a silk trader from Damascus and a Venetian ship captain. The trader accused the captain of underpaying for a shipment, while the captain claimed the goods were damaged upon delivery. Both men demanded compensation, and the argument threatened to escalate into violence. Alessandro intervened personally, calling for an arbitration council in Constantinople. He meticulously reviewed the contracts, examined the evidence, and consulted witnesses. After days of deliberation, the council ruled that the captain had indeed shortchanged the trader but that the damages claimed were exaggerated. A fair settlement was reached, and both parties left satisfied. The case became a turning point for the Brotherhood. Merchants began to see it not just as a protective organization, but as a beacon of integrity in an otherwise treacherous world. A growing influence. As the Brotherhood grew, so did its influence. Alessandro oversaw the creation of a written charter, codifying the principles of the organization. He also established scholarships for young merchants, offering training in navigation, negotiation, and ethics. These initiatives attracted a new generation of traders eager to join the Brotherhood, further solidifying its presence across Europe and the Middle East. Yet, Alessandro remained humble. He often reminded his council of the lessons he had learned in the desert, the wisdom of Elias, and the promise he had made. "We are not just merchants," he said. "We are stewards of a tradition that values honor above all." A threat from within. Even as the Brotherhood flourished, it faced its greatest challenge yet, a betrayal from within. A wealthy member, Giovanni Orsini, used the Brotherhood's networks to smuggle contraband, tarnishing its reputation. When the scheme was uncovered, Alessandro acted swiftly, expelling Giovanni and launching an investigation to repair the damage. But Giovanni was not done. Enraged by his exile, he spread rumors that Alessandro had orchestrated the smuggling operation, hoping to destroy him. The accusations reached the Venetian council, which summoned Alessandro to defend himself. Chapter 5: The Betrayal. The summons from the Venetian council arrived at dawn, delivered by a Samba courier. Alessandro Vitoli unrolled the scroll, his eyes scanning the words with mounting tension. Giovanni Orsini's accusations were severe: smuggling, corruption, and abuse of the Brotherhood's influence for personal gain. These charges threatened not only Alessandro's reputation, but also the very foundation of the Brotherhood of the Compass. For a moment, Alessandro stood frozen, the weight of the parchment heavy in his hands. Then, with a deep breath, he resolved to face the council head-on. He had always known that success would attract envy and opposition. This was his moment to prove that integrity and honor could withstand even the fiercest storms. Rallying the Brotherhood. Alessandro convened a meeting of the Brotherhood's council in the grand hall of their Venetian headquarters. Yusuf, Zara, and other key members sat around the polished oak table, their faces grim. Giovanni's lies have reached the council, Alessandro began, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. They question our legitimacy. If we fail to counter these accusations, everything we've built will crumble. Yusuf leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. We've built a network of allies across Europe and the Levant. Merchants who owe their success to the Brotherhood. Their voices could counter Giovanni's slander. Zara nodded, her eyes sharp with determination. We've faced bandits and storms. A corrupt merchant schemes won't break us. I'll go to Damascus and gather testimonies from our allies there. Others volunteered to travel to Constantinople, Alexandria, and other major trade hubs, collecting evidence of the Brotherhood's impact. Alessandro, meanwhile, prepared his defense, gathering ledgers, contracts, and letters that demonstrated the Brotherhood's transparency and ethical practices. Facing the Venetian Council. The council chamber in Venice was an imposing hall, its high ceilings adorned with frescoes of Venetian triumphs. Rows of patricians, dressed in elaborate robes, filled the room. At the center sat the Doge, his expression inscrutable. Giovanni Orsini stood to one side, a smug smile playing on his lips. Alessandro took his place opposite him, flanked by Yusuf and Zara, who had returned with a trove of testimonials. Alessandro Vitoli, the Doge began, his voice echoing through the chamber. You stand accused of using the Brotherhood of the Compass for illicit activities. What say you in your defense? Alessandro stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. I say that the accusations are baseless, and I am here to prove it. The Brotherhood was founded on principles of honor and integrity. Everything we do is transparent and accountable. He presented ledgers meticulously detailing the Brotherhood's finances, showing no discrepancies. He read letters from merchants in Damascus, Constantinople, and beyond, attesting to the Brotherhood's fairness and the safety it had brought to trade routes. One merchant, an elderly silk trader from Constantinople, had even traveled to Venice to testify in person. Before the Brotherhood, I lost my caravan to bandits, he said. It was Alessandro who helped me rebuild. Without him, I would not stand here today. The council murmured as witness after witness spoke, their voices painting a picture of an organization dedicated to uplifting merchants and fostering trust. The turning point. Giovanni, sensing the tide turning against him, interrupted with venomous accusations. These are mere words, he spat. Where is the proof that the Brotherhood isn't a front for smuggling? At this, Zara stepped forward, her sharp gaze locking on Giovanni. The proof lies in your own dealings, Orsini, she said, pulling out a document. This is a contract you forged, using the Brotherhood's seal, to smuggle contraband through Alexandria. The real question is, how long have you been plotting to undermine us? The chamber erupted in gasps. The document, obtained through Zara's network of contacts, was irrefutable. Giovanni's face turned ashen as the Doge called for order. The council deliberated for hours, but the evidence was clear. Giovanni's schemes were exposed, and he was stripped of his titles and exiled from Venice. Alessandro, meanwhile, was vindicated. The Doge himself commended him for his transparency and the Brotherhood's contributions to Venetian trade, strengthening the foundation. Though triumphant, Alessandro knew this was no time for complacency. The ordeal had revealed vulnerabilities in the Brotherhood's structure, chiefly the danger of internal corruption. He proposed reforms to ensure greater accountability, including regular audits and a system for members to report misconduct anonymously. The Brotherhood emerged stronger than ever, its reputation burnished by Alessandro's defense. Merchants who had once doubted its legitimacy now clamored to join, and the Venetian Council officially recognized it as a vital institution for trade. A moment of reflection. That evening, Alessandro returned to his home overlooking the canals of Venice. The city was quiet, the water reflecting the glow of lanterns. Yusuf and Zara joined him, sharing a meal to celebrate their victory. "To think," Yusuf said, raising his glass, "all of this began with a single map and a promise." "A promise worth keeping," Zara added, her eyes glinting with pride. Alessandro smiled, the weight of the past months lifting from his shoulders. "We faced storms, bandits, and betrayal," he said. "And we've overcome them all. The Brotherhood is more than an organization, it's a testament to what we can achieve when we choose honor over greed." As the night deepened, Alessandro felt a quiet satisfaction. Yet, he knew his journey was far from over. The world of trade was vast and unpredictable, and the lessons he had learned would guide him as he continued to build his legacy. Chapter 6: The Eternal Compass. Years passed, and Alessandro Vitoli grew older, his hair streaked with silver and his steps slower, but no less purposeful. The Brotherhood of the Compass had flourished, becoming a beacon of trust and collaboration in a world where trade was often synonymous with treachery. Yet, Alessandro's mind was restless. He had built an enduring institution, but he wanted to leave behind more than wealth or reputation. He wanted to share the lessons he had learned, the trials, triumphs, and moral compass that had guided him. One evening, as the autumn wind rustled through the canals of Venice, Alessandro sat in his study, quill in hand, a stack of parchment before him. By the flickering light of an oil lamp, he began to write. The Merchant's Compass. Alessandro titled his work The Merchant's Compass, a name that symbolized both navigation and integrity. It was more than a manual for trade, it was a guide to life. Each chapter was infused with wisdom drawn from his own experiences and the stories of others he had encountered on his journey. Chapter 1: The Value of Honor spoke of his pact with Elias and the importance of keeping one's word, even when fortune turned against you. Chapter 2: The Lessons of Loss recounted the storm in Syria, the attack by bandits, and how misfortune could be a catalyst for growth. Chapter 3: The Power of Collaboration explored the founding of the Brotherhood and the strength that came from unity. Chapter 4: Navigating Betrayal reflected on his battle with Giovanni Orsini, emphasizing resilience and the importance of allies in times of crisis. Chapter 5: Building a Legacy offered practical advice on creating something that would outlive its founder, stressing humility and foresight. Alessandro's words were simple yet profound, capturing the essence of a life shaped by both hardship and opportunity. He wrote not just for merchants, but for anyone seeking to find purpose and integrity in their endeavors. Teaching the next generation. As the manuscript took shape, Alessandro began inviting young merchants to his home. They came from all walks of life, sons of Venetian patricians, daughters of Levantine traders, and ambitious dreamers from distant lands. Alessandro shared his knowledge freely, blending lessons from his book with anecdotes from his travels. One evening, a young apprentice named Marco asked, "Master Alessandro, what is the most important quality a merchant must possess?" Alessandro smiled, setting down his quill. "It's not cunning or ambition, though those have their place. It's trust. Trade is a bridge between people, cultures, and worlds. Without trust, that bridge collapses." The words resonated deeply, and Marco would later become one of the Brotherhood's most influential leaders. A final journey. In his later years, Alessandro embarked on one final journey. Accompanied by Yusuf, Zara, and a small retinue, he traveled to Persia, the land where his dreams had first taken shape. The caravan followed the now-renowned route he had rediscovered, passing through Ansh, Aleppo, and finally reaching Isfahan. In Isfahan, Alessandro visited the Grand Bazaar, marveling at its beauty and the diversity of its traders. He presented a copy of the merchant's compass to a local merchant guild, symbolizing the connection between East and West. The guild's leader, an elderly man with a kind smile, bowed deeply. "Your words will guide us as your compass has guided the caravans," he said. The journey back to Venice was serene, filled with moments of reflection and gratitude. Alessandro felt at peace, knowing that he had fulfilled his promise to Elias and more. The Eternal Compass. Alessandro Vitoli passed away quietly one spring morning, his home overlooking the canals bathed in golden light. News of his death spread quickly, and tributes poured in from across Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Traders paused their work to honor the man who had transformed their world. The Brotherhood of the Compass continued to thrive, its influence reaching new heights. Alessandro's manuscript, The Merchant's Compass, became a cherished text, translated into numerous languages and studied by merchants, scholars, and leaders. In Venice, a statue of Alessandro was erected in the Rialto market, depicting him holding a compass and a scroll. The inscription read, "To Alessandro Vitoli, who turned misfortune into opportunity and built a legacy of trust and honor. May his compass guide us forever." Generations later, as the sun set over the canals, storytellers would gather in the squares of Venice, recounting the tale of Alessandro Vitoli. His story became more than history, it became legend, a timeless reminder that honor and perseverance could shape the destiny of not just one man, but the world.